Good morning, Liberty. It is Monday morning, April 1st, 2019. My name is Michael Bolden, broadcasting to you live here from my home office and studio for the 10th Amendment Center in downtown Los Angeles, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. So good morning to you, or good afternoon if you happen to be watching in, I guess, just on the East Coast. Central time is still good morning. Or good evening, I guess, if you're watching later on in the archive. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just very grateful for you spending a little time with me today. In this episode, I want to talk to you a little bit about CBD. Not necessarily from the health perspective or from the business perspective, but from the fact that I have heard many people say things to me like, oh man, they legalized it in the Farm Bill, which I did cover previously in an episode a little while ago, the Farm Bill itself, on how it did not change the status of CBD under federal law, laws in quotes, of course. But then people start saying things like, well, you know, it's available everywhere. You can buy it online. You can get it shipped in interstate commerce. There's no way it's illegal. The feds would never allow this to happen. But surprise, surprise, it's it's an interesting situation. To me, it's very exciting because it shows the power of the market and of nullification when people are doing things in huge numbers. Market grows so fast, the feds simply can't stop it. Now, before doing that, I do want to say a quick hello to some good friends in the live chat. We do broadcast a live simulcast through Periscope, YouTube, and Facebook. So let's scroll through. I'm not going to get everybody, but I want to say hi to Anna, Bob, Justin, Dennis, Tom, Dan, Ward, Allen, Sherry, Dave, Jim, Kevin, Suzanne, Tim, and I really appreciate everybody. I can't keep up with everybody in the chat, but I'm going to do my best. I think I've got a better setup than I have in the last couple of weeks. I think I've got this thing down almost. So let's get right to it. Oh, and I do see a reminder in the live chat. If you do enjoy this show and you want to support what we do, the easiest way is super easy, super free. Just smash that like button, whatever platform you're on. Share the link to the video. And, of course, leave comments, whether it's here live or later on in the archive. All of that triggers the platforms that you're watching or listening on, and it tells the platform to show it to more people. They're very easily triggered, so let's go ahead and do that. And thank you all for helping me out in that way. So quickly, just to mention, so 2 previous episodes, if you're watching, otherwise, links are in the show notes at 10thamendmentcenter.com/goodmorningliberty. On December 28th of 2018, I did an episode, What's Next for Hemp and CBD After the Farm Bill. You'll get a much better overview of what the Farm Bill did as far as industrial hemp and CBD. And then this short video, Permission Not Needed, CBD Legalization Despite Federal Prohibition, was from back in August. I think that's an interesting overview for just a couple of minutes. Now, what really brought this to my attention was some mainstream media reporting that I've been able to find CBD basically everywhere. In fact, there was an article that Mike Meharry reported on that came from the New York Times or Consumer Reports or something that says CBD is literally available everywhere. But I noticed that it wasn't available at any like the real big box or the major mainstream chain stores. I couldn't find it in Whole Foods, large with hundreds of stores, grocer that's dedicated to health foods, for example. But I could find it in more regional stores. So they have it at Sprouts, which is in multiple states here on the West Coast. I can also find it in California-based stores like Lassen's. And you can find it whether it's in food, in drinks, in topical creams, and pill form, and oils, and all kinds of things. I can find hemp at a local clothing store. They have like a little refrigerator that has Vibes hemp tea, organic hemp-infused tea with CBD in it. So you can find this stuff all over the place in places like here in Southern California and in many other places. I know in New York City, they're trying to get it out of restaurants and things like that, but it's available all over the place. So then I saw that Walgreens is now going to start selling CBD products in 1,500 stores. I heard about it first through my friend Robert Scott Bell, who does a show from at noon to 2 p.m. Pacific time on health freedom and a lot of liberty-based items as well. And so I heard about him talking about this last week, about Walgreens and then CVS. And here's this report from CNBC on the 27th. So I guess just last week. I guess CVS was the first one because it was the week before. And the report says Walgreens will sell CBD creams, patches, and sprays, not food products, no teas, no brownies, nothing like that, in nearly 1,500 stores in select states, the company told CNBC on Wednesday, the 26th, I guess that would have been, or 25th. I don't know. I can't. My math is terrible. I went to government schools. So it says the drugstore chain will sell cannabis-based products in Oregon, Colorado, New Mexico, Kentucky, Tennessee, Vermont, South Carolina, Illinois, and Indiana. And they declined to specify which brands that they were going to carry. Rival drugstore chain CVS introduced CBD-containing topicals, including creams and salves, to stores in 8 states earlier in March. As the non-psychoactive cannabis compound becomes one of the hottest ingredients in consumer products, retailers are carefully evaluating the market. This is a massive market. It's growing incredibly fast. I've heard people in the natural health realm tell me that this is the fastest growing product they've ever seen in their lives. Its reach is just huge. Now, the feds, if you paid attention to my episode on CBD, the Farm Bill specifically exempted CBD, even though they said hemp is legal, you can process it, you can do all these things, but it said specifically in the legislation that they are not changing the FDA's control over CBD in food, drugs, and cosmetics. That's from the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. And the FDA says that CBD is an experimental drug, and so therefore it cannot be used in food, period. Anything that's consumable, 100% no. Now, I'll get to a little bit more. The FDA says, here, this is from CNBC, the FDA says companies still can't add CBD to food or sell it as a dietary supplement. The regulatory uncertainty has left some large companies on the sidelines for now. Selling CBD-infused beauty and skincare products brings far less risk, but not zero, making it an obvious first step for retailers. And this is that report that I covered on the episode back in December. Section 297D, paragraph C1, regulations and guidelines, effect on other law states, quote, nothing in this subtitle in the Farm Bill shall affect or modify the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. So Mike Meharry writes, practically speaking, passage of the Farm Bill does not mean CBD will now be federally legal in all 50 states, as some hemp supporters claim. In fact, the FDA still maintains a strict prohibition on the sale of CBD in the U.S. because they classify it as a drug for which substantial clinical investigations has been instituted. They have actually approved one product called Epidiolex, I believe it's what it's called, and this is going through clinical phases, and it is an isolate. It is not a full spectrum. And it says FDA in this statement in June, and I've got a link to this again in the show notes, is they're concerned about the proliferation and illegal marketing of unapproved CBD-containing products with unproven medical claims. So food is 100%. FDA is very aggressive about this, saying absolutely not. And in fact, they reiterated this just in December 20th, a week before I did that episode. And they said specifically, Congress explicitly preserved the agency's current authority to regulate products containing cannabis or cannabis-derived compounds under the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act and Section 351 of the Public Health Service Act. So they're concerned about blah, blah, blah. They're talking about how wonderful they are. But they say specifically that you cannot have it in food. Additionally, it is unlawful under the Food FD&C, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, to introduce food containing added CBD or THC into interstate commerce. And we know from the Gonzalez versus Raich case of 2005, which they used to support Obamacare in the NFIB versus Sebelius case against Obamacare, that Justice Scalia wrote for the majority that growing a plant in your backyard, consuming it in your home, never taking it across state lines, never actually buying or selling it somehow affects interstate commerce, and so therefore it can be regulated as interstate commerce by the federal government. So it doesn't actually have to cross state lines. This is a code word from the FDA saying anything in commerce, anything being grown, produced, sold, exchanged, consumed, whatever, will affect interstate commerce, and they do have the court precedent on this. Unfortunately, it is totally wrong according to the Constitution, but the FDA takes the position that they have total control over this, and it is illegal to put it into food. Now, it's also an issue, although like the CNBC report said, there is less risk on beauty products, for example, creams, topicals, things like that. Now, where the gray area comes in is if they're making a health claim. So if there's no health claim and they just say CBD oil, you might be able to get away with it. And at this point, everyone is getting away with it. I can go online and buy CBD, have it shipped to whatever state I want in the country, and no one's stopping that. So this is the press release, the official statement from the FDA from December. We also have their statement from June where they talk about their control over CBD products. And now, mind you, the farm bill that decriminalized hemp on the federal level that passed at the end of the year specifically said it did not change any structure under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act with the FDA. And just months earlier, they were talking about CBD and says these products have been marketed in a variety of formulations such as oil drops, capsules, syrups, teas, and topical lotions and creams. So they see their control over CBD products in all these areas, cosmetics as well. So it's interesting to me that Walgreens and CVS are both going to be carrying these products. They're basically, I don't think anyone's going to shut down Walgreens. You're not going to see armed FDA guards going into Walgreens and raiding the store. It's not going to happen. I think we all know that's not going to happen. But it wouldn't happen, and Walgreens wouldn't be carrying it if it wasn't for a bunch of other people carrying the product in the first place and Walgreens saying, oh, we got to get our greedy hands on this. That's how the markets are stronger than government. So here's an interesting article from FDA.gov. They talk about how something can be both a cosmetic and a drug. And CBD, according to the FDA, is an experimental drug. So I think it's all very much gray area. You can do some legal research on this, and law firms that specialize in this area, cannabis and food law and things like that, cosmetic law, they all say it's very gray. In fact, the FDA has specifically not mentioned any type of crackdown on cosmetics, and maybe that's why. Maybe there's a private conversation going on between these large chains and some officials at FDA who say, okay, we're going to end up backing off on this anyways. The fact of the matter is that they're put in this position because the market is grown up so quickly regarding it in the first place. They say some products meet the definitions of both cosmetics and drugs. This may happen when a product has two intended uses. For example, a shampoo is a cosmetic because it is intended to use is to cleanse the hair. An anti-dandruff treatment is a drug because its intended use is to treat dandruff. So certain types of shampoos are considered drugs, and then the FDA can ban them as an illegal drug if they wanted to. I mean, I don't think they're authorized to, but that's the position that they take. And here from FDA Reader, which does a lot of really good analysis about what the FDA does, their positions, and things like that, they're talking about CBD-containing cosmetics, and that's from January of this year. And they point out, again, this same type of thing. The difference between a cosmetic and a drug is whether the product, quote, affects the structure or function of the body. This is according to the FDA. They say then, simply, if the product causes any sort of physiological change that is beyond, quote, cleansing, beautifying, promoting attractiveness, or altering the appearance, then it is considered a drug. And then they give the antiperspirant example, which is similar to the anti-dandruff. They say antiperspirant is considered over-the-counter drug because its effects are not merely cosmetic. Antiperspirant causes a physiological change. It blocks our pores. Sunscreen is also considered a drug. Deodorant would be considered a cosmetic, just perfume. So the FDA does get their grubby little mitts on all kinds of things. And so they go on here. This is their analysis. This is not the FDA saying this, but it is reasonable to conclude that the FDA would take this position if they could get away with it. And I think they would take this position all the time. it's going to be hard for them to crack down on a market that's grown so quickly. Of course, they say CBD has a physiological effect on the body. It's the active ingredient in the FDA-approved prescription drug Epidiolex. So any product containing CBD would be classified as a drug. Any product. I agree that this is how the FDA looks at it. Even if you argued that the CBD served a cosmetic purpose or made no claims about the effects of CBD, has a well-known therapeutic use, and this would classify it as a drug. And so they take the position, like I do, and that the FDA does as well, that unless the FDA changes how they regulate CBD specifically, CBD-containing cosmetics are illegal. That's the question there. If you're looking at the video, does this mean CBD-containing cosmetics are illegal? Yes, illegal, but available in 1,500 stores at Walgreens, hundreds of stores. I think it was like 800 stores for CVS. So thousands of stores now will be carrying. Mainstream retail stores are going to be carrying these. Now, it's my assumption that the products will not make any health claims, or it'll have some kind of disclaimer that says this has not been researched or studied or proven in FDA trials, so use at your own risk. It'll probably be something like that. And you know what? That's fine. I don't trust the FDA in the first place, so I would rather have third-party independent research or test things out on my own. Not that I want to just start pouring substances into my body, but I use CBD. I have CBD-infused cold brew coffee that I buy illegally as food right down the street, just blocks down the street from me at my favorite coffee shop. I buy it in tea. I get drops. My partner, Sarah, she gets shipped to her these little candied gummies. They're 10 milligrams of CBD that helps her with her anxiety. I've used them as well. They're amazing. You're not getting high off of it. It also helps with inflammation. So I shouldn't get all distracted into the health benefits of these types of things because it's different for each person. And I'm not a doctor. There's a disclaimer. But I use it for me, and I buy it locally. I have it shipped, and I'm violating the law every single time I'm doing this. I'm violating what the FDA says is legal to do. And so are the companies that are selling it to me. And I'm proud of it. And I'm proud that they're doing it. And they're doing it in such large numbers that they're now going to be carrying it at Walgreens. And that means the genie is out of the box and it cannot be stopped. And now, on top of it, there are a number of states that are actually taking action to make this expressly legal in their state, despite whatever the FDA may have to say. Now, the FDA is giving out they're giving some mixed messages and take a lot of research to figure out what their position is on this or that. So why not look to the states? That's how it should be done in the first place anyways. So here, for example, in Wyoming, it was signed into law last month. House Bill 171 was introduced by Representative Bunky Laux on January 15th, and it was signed by the governor early in March by Governor Mark Gordon. It legalizes all hemp and hemp-derived products. And again, referencing back to the episode that I was talking about, when you're talking about hemp, there are different parts of the hemp plant. You can have grain, seed, things like that. Those are not regulated by the FDA. Those are off the scheduled list of the DEA. So therefore, it's an open season on that stuff. But CBD, where you get these compounds, comes from an extraction process from the resin of the flower of the plant. And that's the part that the FDA has control over. And that's the part that's being used in all these different products, from oils, foods, creams, and the like. Now, in Wyoming, they're just saying all hemp and hemp-derived products, whatever part of the plant it comes from, is now legal in Wyoming. It passed by a 60-0 vote in the House and 26-3 in the Senate. It was an emergency measure bill, so with the governor's signature, it went into effect. Now, I think this is why it was an emergency measure, because last summer, listen to this, quote, a woman passing through Jackson was arrested on felony possession charges after CBD oil was found in her possession during a routine traffic stop by local cops. The exact same product was available for retail sale nearby at local supermarket Lucky's and Jackson Hole Grocer at the time of the arrest. So she got arrested for buying something at her local grocery store. And this made news, and I think people were pretty irritated by it. Now, passage of HB 171 ensures that the state will not regulate CBD and CBD products. No one's going to stop anybody from doing that on a state level, and FDA certainly does not have the resources to do this. DEA is out of the ballgame completely at this point, from my understanding, although they probably will try to find a way to weasel their way back in. We'll see. And Mike Meharry writes on this, this is crucial because despite removing the plant from the list of controlled substances late last year, the federal government still bans the sale of CBD products under FDA rules. So now Wyoming is saying, well, we're not going to do anything about it. It's over. We don't want to have to, we're not going to arrest people on the streets for buying something at their local health food store. That should not be illegal. It's absurd. It's not just Wyoming. Just last week in Maine, Governor Janet Mills signed a bill into law allowing the sale of food and food additives containing CBD within the state. They specifically are authorizing CBD in food and food additives. Now we go back to the FDA statement where they say specifically it's unlawful under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act to introduce food containing added CBD into interstate commerce. Now, Maine is being a little slick about this. They're basically, the law that they passed talks about just making sure it's done within the state. Now, we know that the feds, and this is going to create all these kind of layers of legal confusion that are going to make it so difficult, if not impossible, for the feds to do anything about, because they're saying interstate commerce. And now if there's a court challenge, I don't expect the courts to come down on the right side. I think the federal courts will say that basically everything is interstate commerce like they always have, at least in modern times. But Maine is being pretty creative, and they're making it more difficult for the feds to do anything about this. And this is how Meharry writes about it. The new law clarifies that food additives, and food products containing hemp-derived cannabidiol produced and sold within the state are not adulterated. In effect, this legalizes the sale of CBD in food in Maine. Period. As long as they're not claiming that the food has any type of, it cannot treat or cure or deal with any type of diseases. That's to kind of get around. This is smart strategy. We're going to legalize it. We're going to allow you to put in food. Just make sure it's in intrastate commerce. It's not crossing state boundaries, and they can figure out how to deal with it. And then don't make any claims about the health properties. Boom, done. The health program, before passing this in the state, they were sending letters to retail food establishments and telling them they had to stop. They were even contacting pet stores. So this legislation was a response to the state acting like the enforcement arm for the federal government. And we know they do this on almost all federal programs. So some smart legislators, and positively, they move forward on this. So this was signed into law by more than a 2/3 majority. So with the governor's signature, it goes into immediate effect as well. And I'm not sure, maybe I spoke wrong about that on Wyoming. No, it also went into immediate effect. So in effect, in Wyoming and in Maine, they're saying it's illegal to do this, even though the feds are saying specifically not. And then here in California, now these are not the only states. We're tracking this type of legislation in at least another dozen states, and we'll be reporting more on that in the near future. But just last week, Assembly Bill 228 specifically did the same thing. And they're not even talking about intra or interstate commerce or any of this. They're just saying the state of California. It only passed the committee stage, but it passed by a huge margin, 20-0 vote. And also, it previously passed another committee by a vote of 15-0. So we're seeing Republicans and Democrats across the board in California, in Maine, in Wyoming saying, look, we don't need to be arresting people for this stuff. This is a health food product. The FDA, the DEA, they have been way behind on this, and people are using it. No one's dying in the streets from CBD. There's no accidents, none of this stuff. Although I shouldn't even talk about that because someone will start making that kind of absurd claim as a reason to stop things. But in California, the California Department of Health was saying they had to enforce FDA rules and couldn't allow anyone to put CBD into food products, although it has never stopped me from getting it anywhere here in Los Angeles. It is all over the place. And it says, quote, California makes a determination that they are safe to use for human and animal consumptions, but CBD products are not an approved food ingredient, food additive, or dietary supplement because the FDA took that position. They said until the FDA rules that these CBD products can be used that way, we can't do it because under California law, they basically have to comply or implement FDA rules. So passage of AB 228, Mike Maharrey writes, would effectively deem CBD safe for human and animal consumption and put an end to state prohibition of CBD products. So this is what we're seeing here. We're seeing a huge number of people, huge number of states, huge number of businesses basically doing what they feel is right, even though the federal government for so long has said you can't do this. They've banned hemp for so many years. They finally are taking industrial hemp off the controlled substances list, but leaving part of it on there, CBD, kicking the can over to the FDA. The FDA says you can't do it. People are doing it anyways. I think this is a blueprint for liberty no matter what the issue. It just takes enough people, enough states, enough businesses, enough local communities willing to say no to federal prohibition on various items. So I hope you guys found this interesting. I'm keeping it a little bit short for these few episodes. I will not have a show this week, Friday, as a reminder. If you support this episode, you support what we're doing, make sure to smash that like button, continue leaving comments. Feel free to email me over at team@10thamendmentcenter.com, all spelled out. And I will see you on Wednesday morning, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time for another episode of Good Morning Liberty. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.